So, yeah.
Okay. Ooh, here you go, Mrs. Smith. Beautiful. So let's jump in. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to work with this cohort as we think about embedding reteaches into daily practice. And so one thing that I'll say that as we make this switch to standards-based grading, reteaches and reassessments are more critical than ever because we want to make sure we're giving students opportunities to succeed. And so with that, our objective for today, Mr. Balfour, will you read this out for us?
Warriors will be able to, teachers will be able to understand and practice the steps for embedding reteaches into their daily instruction.
Thank you. And so this is how we'll do it. We'll start with a little bit of framing. We'll talk about systems. I love a system, big fan. And then we will have time to actually put it into practice and then close out with some next steps. So let's jump in. First, take 30 seconds to read through the 3 pillars of equitable grading. Think about what stands out to you the most. Okay, we'll just share out for a small group, so hands down discussion. What sticks out to us about these 3 pillars of equitable grading?
The fact that it should be designed to motivate student achievement, like the design should be easy and drive their own interest and engagement.
Opportunity for redemption. Everybody's entitled to a bad time. That's it. That's the way.
I like the easy to understand portion, not only for students, but families are looking at Illuminated, they'll be able to follow as well.
And it's bias free, so it's not based off of, oh, that student was doing too much in class today. Nope, it is based off of what they know.
Especially those first 2 are aligned to some of those refresher elements that we talked about last session, right? We need this to be easy to understand because parents are going to be looking at this. We want caregivers to be looking at their grades with their students, not so that they can be the only people motivating them and holding their hand, but so that they can also support at home, just like we will here. Additionally, we want to eliminate as much bias as we can, right? One thing that a lot of students reported when we were doing student interviews last year is that, some teachers were just grading homework on completion, but some teachers were grading it 100% on accuracy, and right there, it's creating a disparity, and it's creating some ambiguity, and it's creating some potential bias, as well as that engagement grade. It's entirely on bias, right? It's like, oh, great, Jen, you didn't call out at all today, so I'm gonna give you 10 points. I don't know if you learned anything, but you now have 10 points in your grade book. For today, and we started with this, so I'm really excited, we're focusing on that motivation piece, particularly on that opportunities for redemption. That's really where this is routed. And then especially as we think about, kids can get a 0 now, and so that can be really scary. And so we want them to have opportunities to succeed beyond that. And so our core idea is this. Learning depends on mistakes, but only when there's a mechanism to review mistakes and an opportunity to correct them. And so with that, we're going to talk about creating systems. There's a space on that handout I gave you. At the bottom for you to take notes about what we're going to talk about specifically as it relates to ASIP. I'm really excited for this acronym I'm about to roll out to you. As well as some other general notes. The thing that I want to name before we fully jump in is we're not going to leave this room masters of the reteach. And in fact, we're focusing more on the embedding component than we are on the actual, I'm going to stand up and deliver a reteach and reassessment to students. The reason being is that creating a system that doesn't, completely overwhelm your life and it doesn't add an extra thing that you're doing all of the time is the part that makes this sustainable and actually makes this impactful for students. So we're focusing on the systematizing element today, so hopefully we can embed this and then shave time and get some time back. And so that's why we're focusing on this versus the reteach it themselves. So let's jump in. So there are 4 steps when we think about embedding or reteach into your class. The first, assess. You know, do the assessment. You gotta like see how kids are doing. The second is sort. The third, identify the gap. And then the last is plan the reteach. Also known as ASIP or ASAP with a spelling error. We're gonna try this again. So, also known as ASIP or ASAP with a spelling error.
Yeah, yeah. You be here all week, right?
Josh is not prepared today, so give him the demerit. I'm
Oh,
prepared.
okay.
Oh, and he was late though too.
I ain't late.
And Ms. Mondo deserves a merit for art.
Because she required.
You're giving me excuses, I expect results. Okay, so we're gonna sort of delve into what each of these components actually look like and how you can start to embed them into your system. I'm gonna go pretty quickly through these. Feel free to stop me and raise your hand as we go through, just jump in, because I want us to actually have time to practice this so that we can start running with this on Tuesday. So the first is assess. Again, this is the part where you brought your exit tickets or your formative assessment here. And so the main thing to take away is when I'm talking about this idea of embedding reteaches, I'm primarily focusing responding to formative assessment data. So that's not necessarily a minor summative, it doesn't have to be a quiz, it's not that major summative. This is that daily information, that daily level of mastery that you're tracking on a regular basis, okay? And it's hard. We have 7 blocks a day, every single day, and so tracking that mastery is hard. That's why we're doing this system. The second is sort. This is probably where a lot of us can shave some time. So the first thing to note, and I want to name this, I'm going to name this to staff over and over again for however long it takes. You do not have to track the mastery of an exit ticket for every single block you teach. That's how excited I am, guys. You don't have to track the mastery for every single block you teach, okay? Instead, what you can do, find a representative block. Be like, yo, my block 3, it's got a really good level of high students, medium students, low students. That's pretty representative of the rest of the students I teach. I'm gonna look at their data. Or if you're like, you know what, I teach 3 blocks, let me just take 10 from this block, 10 from this block, 10 from this block, so I can feel like it's a little bit more targeted to each block. From there, you then just sort it into high, medium, low. Mastered, almost, not yet. Determine that level of mastery. This is gonna be, is it 2 minutes until the next? This is gonna be grounded in your criteria for success, in your exemplar. How are they doing? Sort them into that high, medium, low. Now, notice one thing here. At no point was I you're gonna be writing feedback, you're giving scores, you're telling them what to write. That's not happening here. It's not happening in this part. Then we've got the I. Identify the gap. Great. What is the difference between the medium and the high? What piece of feedback would I give the majority of my kids in the middle section to push them to a high? Absolutely.
So, back on the sort, when you said choose those 10 students that choose 2, 5, and just from different classes, for related art, well, not related arts, it's middle school song. For lifetime wellness, would it be, I look at an assessment, a quiz, and I pull their grades and then look and see who mastered what?
So this is gonna be based on an exit ticket. So say at the end of a Tuesday, you give an exit ticket to all of your blocks. You take the exit ticket from one of your blocks and then you sort it into high, medium, low. You're not grading. You're not grading this. This does not go into the grade book. This is just so you know how to respond to data the next block or the 2 blocks from now. Identifying that gap. So what's that difference? If, you have only lows and mediums, then it's like, how can I get the lows and the mediums, or like try to get all of them into this medium or high bucket? But identifying what's that gap that you can push those students into that next bucket. And then from there, you plan your reteach. And so for this, you gotta determine the how. So how are you gonna do this? Will you do an error analysis? I do, we do, you do, comparative show call. And you determine this based on the percent mastery and what the specific gap was. You have to consider both of those. And then considering both of those 2 things, that was redundant, both of those things, determine the when in your lesson you want to actually do this reteach. Does it make sense to just do it in the first 5 minutes of the do now because it's a quick hit? Do you need to spend a little bit more time on it so you're gonna be in that watch? Or is it like, holy crap, we really struggled. We need to spend a lot of time on this, and so this is actually gonna be my point of the productive struggle in the next lesson. Questions about ACID? I created this acronym on my own. Thank you. Okay, so now's your time to shine. Like I said, I wanted the majority of this to be for you to actually get to dig into this work. So, we've already done the assessing, so great, good for us. So we're gonna start with the second step, so sorting. So you're gonna have the next 5 minutes to just sort. I'm intentionally having this be 5 minutes because this should actually not take much longer than 5 minutes. Because you're literally just going through, checking them, being like high, medium, low, and sorting them. So this should take around that time. So however you've got access to that formative data, if it's paper, if it's like you're gonna have to just like manually like tally because you're looking online, all of that's fine. But take about the next 5 minutes, so until 11:35, to be sorting high, medium, low. If you're a rock star and you finish that early, then you can start moving on to that I part, but for right now, we're just focusing on sorting. Yeah. Yeah.
Does it matter?
After you sort it, also go through and count. See like what are the percentages of students do you have in each of those buckets.
Computer or
I got one. seconds over here. If you're not done, that's okay, we can kind of get some of this time back. The next part is identifying the gap. So again, start thinking about what's that difference between the medium and the high. And when you're figuring out that difference, ground it in your CFS, ground it in your exemplar. Which of those 5 CFS did they miss that if they got, they'd be higher? Okay, so we'll take about 7-ish minutes for this, we can adjust it.
headed towards. Because if these students have just solved or they're able after finding it, then that would be input. So that would be 11, that would be correct. So that's what the 60.
But it's the same, yeah, those same, I would say, just like, it's just not like, style them. Because they're using it for the competition, it's in the for the, it's not, you know, so. So it's
Okay. If we'll bring it back, we'll be able to go back in and continue to collaborate with each other. But this last step is plan the reteach. And so this again is where you're determining the how and the when for this reteach. And so if you all actually flip over that handout that you all got at the beginning, there's some guidance for the kind of reteach or how to do this reteach. I will note that this is adapted from a show call and how to like figure out how to plan a show call. The reason being is the protocols are pretty much the same. In both instances, you're responding to data. And so it is a little bit, it applies to both. And so the biggest thing that's helped me was this table at the bottom, where it gives you, based on the level of mastery in your room, what is the kind of show call you should do or the kind of response type, some description of what that looks like. And then one thing I added is what part of the lesson it makes the most sense to do. So for instance, if you realize like only 2/3 of your class actually like mastered this skill, you would probably want to give them a non-exemplar. Sample is incorrect because of one of two things. How can we move them? So again, this is what's the gap between medium and high. How can we move them? And just thinking about time, this could live in the do now, and maybe you could crush this in about 5 minutes. This could be in the launch where it's that next little phase of your lesson. One thing I also want to name, when we say reteach, I do think that sometimes it's got a scary connotation because we're like, great, well my whole lesson tomorrow is not blown up. It does not have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way.
48 minutes.
Huh?
48 minutes.
Sure, right, that's what I'm saying. If like most of your kids got it, or like, but you still want to address it, it's a do now, or it's a launch. And so like, and sometimes maybe you're like, great, one kid got it, we can't even go forward with this next part. And it's like, yes, maybe it's gonna blow up your lesson on the next day, but it doesn't have to. Yes.
Can a reteach be included in the lesson? So like, let's say I'm teaching something and then I ask a question from a previous lesson and like hit on it and then keep going?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. It can be spiral review. You're embedding this into your class. And so, like, it's very much cyclical. And so there are a couple of things that, like, you can do with this that are not here, but, like, I've got people that, some of my coachees who will literally be like, this 10 minutes of this class every day is for me to respond to misconceptions. Like, they, like, build it in. They're like, I already know I'm going to need to address stuff from the previous class. And like they literally will say like misconception section, gonna respond, probably responding to this trend, and they just like leave it blank because they like already know. They build that in. And so you can start doing that, that's a great practice. Or like you can say, you know what, I've got some really good systems to start embedding this. Again, this is the part that's not gonna be perfect. Like that's not it. My goal for this session is for us to figure out our systems, what works for us for this sorting, and for this identifying the gap. Because that's what we have to start doing in order to even start playing those reteaches and responding to data. We'll continue to like build on this throughout the year, but for right now, we've got to find those systems, especially because one trend that we noticed on like we noticed in the survey data is like this feeling of not enough time. Like we're feeling overwhelmed. We've got a lot of stuff to do. And so it's like, great, now we're saying Mariah's telling us now I have to really focus on reteaches and I have to do this. I don't want this to be like, I'm now having to blow up every single lesson and I'm starting from scratch. That's not the goal. My goal is how can we make sure that like in a 48-minute planning block, I actually have enough time to kind of identify what a gap is either for my next class or for the next day that I can kind of quickly start addressing. Yeah.
I kind of see this as I'm working during like my circulating the room during
Yeah.
class as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so this is a you do this while you're circulating in the class. This is you do this like to respond to the next day. This doesn't have to just live like, okay, great, now I'm gonna have to respond tomorrow. This is all a part of data-driven instruction. Yep. And so with that, I'm gonna give you all time just to go back in. Some of you all, like a lot of you were already on this part, but thinking about what does this reteach look like? Looking at this data, if you were to reteach this or embed or reteach on Tuesday, what does it look like? What makes the most sense based on your kids, based on this data, for you to respond to this on Tuesday? Yes?
Can we get a digital copy of?
Absolutely, yep, I'm gonna send one out, 100%. Okay, so y'all can just jump back in, I'll probably put us, we won't do this full 10 minutes, but go ahead and jump back in. We're doing that. Huh.
What I can well, mine is my aim is my lesson. This file is like, there's sometimes things that like students miss last quarter. This is what's going on. Like, our last lesson, just like really kids have bring it in by that quick question. Really quickly just to bring it back. So it's like still centering around what we originally planned, but it's also supporting it to the forward. So it's yeah. It's early on, whenever that brings out, it's like, I can visualize it. It sounds like you already do this, but then you just have a
Yeah,
workbook.
like. Yeah, I just, hang on. Figure out some else to do. I kinda do it, but I don't do the full works. Trying to draw what you
And she was,
No, I'm not a drawer. Without me even looking at it, it's not that bright.
I realized she was recording.
What you looking for?
No, I was trying to get a tissue and I like was walking into like the recording. I was like, whoa.
I think you should get it in there.
Right, I mean, like, at
Authorized
this point,
location.
it's like multiple elements and it's like,
Y'all want snot on my paper?
It's an unauthorized location for reasons.
Please don't sign that.
Please don't.
Carter, can I ask you a question
Absolutely not.
about, great, I'm not gonna, about the mastery thing, so like, if I'm looking at mine, you're considering high mastery, so that's only 37%.
share, or you can share it out. It doesn't have to, you don't have to do the extra stuff.
Yeah, except it's gonna be new for
Word, word, word.
I think this is covering something that. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So what I've noticed, I've got my training.
And it could be, I just want, like, I
Those
do
are
like,
students that have.
specifically SNI.
Providing education.
Once that's done, then my plan is, my plan is one of this is like, yeah, this I want to back to what, just like, this is one really, A obviously is done, but that's not.
Which one would receive the points and tell you why, and then how would you fix it? So, and also I like the because I can do it and extend it to much more into more detail. So what we're trying to do, I realize, and I'm talking about as a kid teacher, every year you get better. Because you look at impact from the culture, you look at your classroom. I realize I can start right after. We start the third day.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, we got about 6 minutes left. I know we're not entirely done, that's okay. Because I wanna make sure we get out of here on time. Don't believe in holding out later. So,
Semicolon.
to close us out, I do just wanna review some common pitfalls that I think, one, stresses out when we're thinking about reteaches, and then I think also make the reteachers or the prepping for the reteach take a lot longer than it should. So the first, is like I need to redo every single lesson plan on a daily basis. That is not feasible, that is not doable, and that is absolutely not at all what we want. And I know she's over there like looking at me, you don't have to, I promise you don't have to. The next, and this I think also is a pitfall that I fell into a lot, was thinking I needed to provide individualized feedback for every student. Part of like our shift this year to standards-based grading is de-emphasizing that. It is on that minor summative, on that major summative, yes, you're gonna get that feedback, but on these formatives, on these daily exit tickets, no. I just need that to be able to respond to data to figure out where I need to push you before that minor summative. Third, analysis paralysis. I also used to fall victim to this quite a bit, where I'd sit there and think of all of the different potential fixes that I could do, and I would just be like, you know what? No, but maybe this should work. And it's 64%, but that's kind of close to 66%. So maybe it should be this. Oh, but no, maybe it should be this. And oh my gosh, should it be comparative? I'm gonna make them dumber. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst teacher ever. It's okay. It is okay. Like, we are not gonna make the right choice every single time. In fact, I don't even know if there is necessarily a right choice. And so instead of like sitting there and stressing about it, just make a choice and commit to it and then go from there. And if like it didn't work great, we can try it again and now we know for next time. But it doesn't have to be as like really trying to get that perfect solution, because there's not one. Or else, you know, we probably would have done it the first time, and why didn't kids learn it the first time? That's their fault, not mine. Next, waiting too long to respond to data. So this actually only works if you're trying to respond to it within like 48 hours. If you are like, I'm gonna look at exit tickets from last week, that data is irrelevant. Like, it does not matter. And so this should be like, you're using this to respond to your next class. Or like your next class, because I'm like really like, it's like if you've got 7th and then you're like going to the, you know, the next day. It's a really quick turnaround. So if you're like, you know what, I need a little bit of a buffer, makes sense, take that buffer. And then lastly, and this is the biggest pitfall, not responding to the data at all. Especially because like we already are feeling that tension of, you know, we want to motivate students in the class when they're not getting a grade, right? And so if they're feeling like they're doing an exit ticket and there's no reason for it, like there's no follow-up, then like it is really demotivating, excuse me. And so I feel that as an adult, and I definitely felt that as a teenager. And so it's really important that like we are responding to this data in some way. And I think like if you look at the plan, the reteach, where it says specific actions, like starting with that status, putting the data in front of them, be like, y'all, we only like 40% mastery. Like name that for kids. Tell them that's why like you looked at their exit tickets, you did it. And then giving them time to stay a bit and fix it. Like have them be like, you know what, we only had this, so you're gonna go back in, fix that exit ticket, fix this thing, or we're gonna apply it to something else. But respond to it in some way. Doesn't have to be through individualized feedback and here's a score and here's like my beautiful eloquent comment of like, no, that's not sustainable. We can't do that. But like we have to respond to it in some way. And so with that, our core idea is you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. And so one thing I want like to like really stamp is like, I'm not saying that you need to be responding to every single exit ticket every single day. Like, that's the ideal, sure, that'd be great. But if you have the same 24 hours in a day that I have, that's probably not gonna be feasible. And so building out this system to where we can do it on a regular cadence in a way that allows us to maximize our 48-minute planning time, then like, this can be doable. And like, we did this session. The session was 45 minutes. We started like 2.5 minutes late, and we were even with stopping, like we were kind of able to figure out what's a gap and to think about a potential like fix. So this doesn't have to consume our entire lives. I don't want it. If you wanted to, great. So with that, there is a next step, and we're gonna sip it up. Thank you. I waited this whole session to make that joke, guys. Thank you. Okay, so by next Friday, I want you to plan and conduct a reteach based on any formative assessment data. It doesn't have to be this, it can be another formative assessment data. And I'm gonna let you call your shot for the accountability metrics here. You can either complete the whole ASIP process, like a prep document, and upload it to a folder. I'm going to use the template that Marina, I was going to create a template after this, but I'm now going to use the one that she's created.
I'm sure you know.
Beautiful, perfect. Create that template that Marina just did, and upload it to your planning folder or give me the link. Or you can film your reteach and send me the link. And I can help you with uploading it to YouTube and all of that. Either one is fine with me. Whichever one you think is more appropriate for where you want feedback and where you want to be supported. It is now 12, and that is all that I've got. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Go, Garner!
Either do the documents out or don't.
Yeah, either one. Call your shot. What are the two?
This one, put it in there.
Yeah. Whichever one, like. And it doesn't even have to be this one if you're like, actually, I really want feedback on how they did on Wednesday. But whichever one. Yeah.